He made a career out of advising millions of people on how to improve their relationships. But long before Dr. Phil became America's most famous relationship coach, his own marriage fell apart in the most painful way possible. What started as a young, love story culminated in incredibly frightening accusations that would follow him for decades and threaten to damage his career. And as notoriety, wealth, and scandal accumulated, Dr. Phil has at last revealed what truly went wrong in his first marriage, the creation of Dr. Phil. He is now well known as Dr. Phil, the straightforward relationship therapist who has assisted millions of people in mending damaged marriages, re-establishing families, and facing addiction on national television. But long before the best-selling books, before Oprah, before daytime TV fame, his own first marriage tragically came apart in ways no one ever dreamed. Years later, his ex-wife's allegations would provide a completely different image of the man that America trusted. Music. Philip Calvin McGra was born on September 1, 1950 in Vinita, Oklahoma. He grew raised in a modest household with 3 sisters. Raised by his parents, Joseph J. McGra, an oil equipment provider, and Geraldine. Life wasn't glamorous. It was regimented and hard work was expected. Phil attended Shawnee Mission North High School where he stood out on the football field. He was talented enough to receive a scholarship to the University of Tulsa. And for a while, football looked like his future. However, everything changed when a devastating accident stopped his athletic career before it ever actually began. Just like that, his plans crashed and he was forced to reconsider his entire existence. Phil transferred to Midwestern State University in Wichita Falls, Texas, and focused his attention to psychology. In 1975, he got his Bachelor of Arts degree, then continued his studies at the University of North Texas, where he completed both his master's and doctorate degrees in experimental and clinical psychology. By the late 1970s, Dr. Phil was officially a professional psychologist. For a short time, he worked in private practice, meeting patients, in person, but he didn't succeed in traditional therapy. Instead, he grew concerned with how people behaved under duress, especially in legal circumstances. That inquiry led to something unexpected. In 1990, Phil co-founded Courtroom Sciences Incorporated, known as CSI, alongside attorney Gary Dobbs. The company specialized in trial, consultation, jury selection, and litigation psychology. Their duty was to help lawyers understand how juries think, how witnesses come across, and, how cases should be presented for maximum impact. CSI soon became a prominent behind-the-scenes actor in important, court battles. They worked with huge corporations and prominent law firms, developing legal strategy in high-stakes lawsuits around the country. But Phil was still unknown to the public. That altered in the mid-1990s during Oprah Winfrey's well-publicized battle with the Texas, cattle business. Oprah employed CSI to assist with case preparation, and Phil worked closely with Oprah during the trial, providing her with advice on courtroom demeanor and tactics. Oprah never forgot him, and she won the lawsuit, She soon started asking Phil to be a guest expert on Oprah Winfrey's show. His forthright, no-nonsense style immediately stood out. He didn't sugarcoat his comments. He spoke frankly, confronted visitors directly, and told folks precisely what they didn't want to hear. By the late 1990s, Dr. Phil was a regular, guest on Oprah's show because the audience adored him. His programs typically attracted good numbers and viewers identified with his straightforward attitude to relationships, addiction, and personal responsibility. He moved from courtroom consultant to daytime television regular practically suddenly. With Oprah's backing, Dr. Phil debuted his own show on September 16, 2002. The format was basic but strong. Real people, real concerns, and straight advice. Substance abuse, mental trauma, parenting difficulties, and marriage failures were among the subjects covered. The show immediately became one of the most watched programs on daytime television. At its peak, millions tuned in every day. Dr. Phil ran for 21 seasons, finally finishing in spring, 2023. Along the process, it won many daytime Emmy nods and became a mainstay of American TV culture. It was created by his own company, Pesky Productions, in cooperation with CBS Media Ventures. But he didn't stop there. Phil also became a best-selling author, releasing many self-help, books that placed on the New York Times bestseller list. He expanded into other television endeavors, including producing The Doctors, a medical talk show spin-off. Later, he joined digital media with podcasts and internet platforms, keeping his influence alive beyond traditional TV. But here's the part most folks don't know. While America was learning how to heal relationships from him, his own very first marriage slowly collapsed behind closed doors. Even his most devoted followers would be shocked by what his ex-wife alleged happened during those early days when she eventually came forward years later. Because before Dr. Phil became the guy who helped others heal, he was already suffering through a personal tempest that almost broke him. The marriage that almost broke him. A large part of Dr. Phil's life as we know it was formed by a relationship that started in his adolescent music years and ended in heartbreak. The woman was Debbie Higgins, and they met while they were still in high school in Kansas. Phil was ambitious, athletic, and already driven by enormous aspirations. Debbie, on the other hand, was vibrant, outgoing, and known among friends as someone who showed up fully for the people she loved. What started out as a teenage relationship soon became serious. They fell in love in high school, music school, and continued to date into their late teens. Growing together in that familiar small-town way, where everyone knows your name and your plans feel simple. At the time, neither of them could have imagined popularity or daytime television. They were just two young people in love, creating dreams around college schedules and future careers. Their romance moved swiftly. Soon after Phil began college, they became engaged. They were married at Roland Park, Kansas's Southridge Presbyterian Church in 1970, when Phil was only 20 years old. It was a modest, intimate ceremony attended by family and friends who thought they were seeing the beginning of a lifelong union, music. After they were married, Debbie took on the role of housewife while Phil concentrated on his studies. She helped him adjust to college life, transfer schools, and start delving further into psychology. It was a standard structure for the time, with Phil seeking professional objectives and Debbie keeping the household together. From the outside, it appeared like a typical young marriage. But behind closed doors, fissures began developing. The pressure of school, uncertainty about the future, and the reality of marrying so young started to take their toll. According to accounts, problems appeared in the relationship really early. Tension gradually replaced the thrill of becoming newlyweds. Reality didn't always align with expectations. Their lives were headed in opposite paths. They did not have children, despite the fact that they were following the same route in theory. And as time passed, it became more difficult to overlook their emotional separation. Eventually, they began living apart. The breakup happened discreetly and was handled discreetly. They both recognized that the marriage they rushed into was not the future they had planned. About 3 years after they said I do, their divorce was formalized in Music, 1973. Just like that, the romance that begun in high school came to an end. Phil continued his study and work, pursuing his goal of becoming a psychologist, music. Debbie followed her own path and opted for a life away from the spotlight. Years later, she would work in film editing and production, developing a career behind the scenes rather than in front of cameras. She maintained a modest profile and avoided the spotlight for the most part. Debbie regrettably passed away in 2014 following a battle with cancer, having lived most of her life far aside from the world that would subsequently surround her former husband. At the time of their divorce, no one could have guessed what Phil's future contained. Neither Dr. Phil's program nor Oprah were involved. He was still trying to figure out who he was after football ambitions had ended and his first marriage had fallen apart. What people didn't comprehend then was that this early tragedy would leave a lasting imprint. Phil had married young, full of ambition and promise, only to leave a few years later, carrying emotional burdens he never talked about in public. He put himself deeper into education, into psychology, into understanding human behavior, perhaps searching for answers he hadn't discovered in his own relationship. For Phil, it was merely the start of a much lengthy trip. Because what would follow would be even more difficult to handle, even while this marriage gently slipped into the past. Years down the line, Debbie would make accusations about their connection that created a worrisome image of those early days. Accusations that would reappear long after Dr. Phil became a household name. And more personal challenges were just around the way as Phil kept moving up the ladder of success. The divorce may have ended one chapter, but his emotional problems were far from over. The man America would soon see on television every afternoon would be shaped by what transpired next. Dr. Phil's own personal hardships. Dr. Phil became a household name. His face was on billboards. Music, his novels topped bestseller lists. And his daytime talk show reached millions every afternoon. However, most viewers were unaware of the pressure to maintain that level of visibility. Running a nationally syndicated show over numerous seasons needed ongoing creativity. Every year brought new competitors, altering audience tastes, and rising criticism from media pundits. Dr. Phil was more than just a chat host. Music, in a business that swiftly moves on from yesterday's stars, he was in charge of ratings, production choices, guest selection, and maintaining the show's cultural relevance. Behind the scenes, there was no room to relax. He had to balance being a television personality with preserving credibility and psychology, and the tension followed him throughout his career. His straightforward style garnered dedicated viewers, but it also invited backlash. Some critics felt his attitude was too harsh. Others said serious mental health issues were being transformed into entertainment. Dr. Phil often found himself walking a narrow line between treating people and delivering compelling television. As his profile grew, that pressure only increased. Phil's professional credentials have been one of the most significant obstacles in his life. Dr. Phil obtained his doctorate degree in clinical psychology from the University of North Texas, but in 2006, he ceased renewing his psychology license. He no longer had a valid license to practice psychology after that. The decision instantly sparked questions. Viewers began asking if it was proper for him to continue using the title doctor while delivering advice on addiction, trauma, and relationships on national television. Critics said that without an active license, his authority was diminished. Some, Music, went so far as to accuse him of being hypocritical by offering psychological advice, Music, even though he was no longer a registered clinician. In response, Dr. Phil emphasized that his television function was not clinical therapy. He presented himself as a media personality and educator rather than a practicing psychologist, Music, explaining that guests on his show were not his patients and that the program ran by entertainment criteria rather, Music, than medical standards. Still, the scrutiny never totally disappeared. He was managing personal health issues in addition to work demands. Dr. Phil has spoken frankly about his lifetime fight with weight management. Over the years, people observed his appearance alter, provoking speculation and discussion. Rather of skirting the matter, he addressed it publicly, stating that sustaining good habits while spending long hours on television was an ongoing challenge. To make matters worse, he was, Music, also battling the deleterious consequences of stress. Decades of filming, production meetings, public appearances, and media commitments took a toll on him. Dr. Phil admits experiencing burnout from the rigorous speed of his career. He also mentioned that addiction and mental health concerns within his extended family greatly affected his professional focus, influencing, Music, why so much of his show focused on rehabilitation, behavior, and emotional healing. And as Music, his brand spread, another scandal emerged that would haunt him for years. Dr. Phil endorsed the Shape Up weight loss product line in the middle of the 2000s, giving the program his name and legitimacy. Customers eventually filed complaints alleging the advertising was deceptive, despite the items being promoted as a component of a healthy living plan. In 2006, the action ended in a $10.5 million settlement. Dr. Phil was not found personally accountable to pay the payment, but the situation tarnished his reputation. Critics accused him of benefiting from shady endorsements while presenting himself as a champion of health and accountability. The episode fostered a broader narrative that some of his economic activities violated ethical limits. Commentators questioned whether a man who taught others on discipline and personal responsibility could be involved with things that ended up in legal issues. For Dr. Phil, it turned into yet another illustration of how rapidly financial interests can undermine public trust. And even as he tried to fight off the criticism, every triumph seemed to draw a new wave of uncertainty. Was he only a TV personality, or was he still a psychologist? Was his advice influenced by the need for entertainment, or was it based on science? Rarely did Dr. Phil address every charge head-on, preferring to keep his attention on his profession. But the pressure was unrelenting, and it came from all angles: journalists, past guests, mental health professionals, and viewers who questioned his tactics. Behind the pristine studio lighting was a man facing professional criticism, health issues, and the emotional weight of family struggles. All while being expected to show up daily with confidence and control. And the scandals around him grew along with his success. Former visitors began speaking out. Past programs leaked, lawsuits followed, and the public started asking deeper questions about what really happened behind the scenes of one of America's most prominent talk shows. Dr. Phil has endured health issues, professional scrutiny, and heartache. But his most devastating storms were still ahead, and the scandals that followed would push his public image into its most chaotic chapter yet. The contentious side of Dr. Phil. Confronting difficult truths in front of a live audience is how Dr. Phil established his business. His show promised responsibility, tough love, and real answers for people experiencing addiction, music, broken homes, and emotional distress. But over the years, a rising number of detractors began asking whether the program was actually helping vulnerable visitors or turning their agony into midday entertainment. One of the most repeated complaints against the show was exploitation. Former guests and mental health professionals regularly alleged that persons battling with addiction, trauma, or extreme emotional anguish were placed in highly charged circumstances designed to create dramatic reactions rather than recovery. The format sometimes focused heavily on confrontations, heated voices, and surprising revelations. Critics said that instead of creating a safe, therapeutic space, the show prioritized moments that would grab viewers' interest. Several visitors later stated they were coached to exaggerate their actions for ratings. Some alleged producers pressured them to confront family members aggressively or to expose profoundly intimate secrets on camera with little preparation for the emotional impact thereafter. More alarming charges appeared when former participants accused production staff of giving booze or illicit substances before song tapings. These charges generated severe ethical concerns, especially since many guests appeared on the show specifically because they were experiencing substance misuse. While the show denied purposely placing guests at risk, the charges spurred a wider debate about how far producers were willing to go to generate entertaining television. Mental health specialists were among the loudest critics. Many argued that Dr. Phil's program sensationalized severe psychiatric concerns and blurred the boundary between therapy and performance. They pointed out that complicated mental health disorders cannot be adequately addressed in short television parts, especially when dramatic confrontations substitute established clinical care. Two high-profile events increased the criticism. Danielle Brigali, a troublesome kid, made an appearance on the show in 2016 after her mother asked for assistance with her behavior. During the episode, Danielle clashed with the audience, and famously yelled, "Cash me outside." How about that? The statement went viral almost instantaneously, turning her into an online sensation. Danielle was launched into stardom rather than obtaining genuine intervention. She eventually changed her identity to become rapper Bod Baby, and the fame she received from that moment served as the foundation for her contentious career. Critics suggested that the episode exploited a vulnerable teen for entertainment and ratings, converting her troubles into a meme rather than addressing the underlying issues that led her to the show. That same year, former actress Shelley Duvall appeared on Dr. Phil in a visibly frail state. During the experience, she showed delusional views and appeared deeply upset. Viewers watched as Dr. Phil questioned her on camera while she battled to express her reality. The backlash was quick. Mental health groups blasted the episode, saying Shelley needed professional medical care, not public exposure. Many accused the program of exploiting her situation for dramatic impact. The episode became one of the most criticized times in Dr. Phil's career, with experts, stating that broadcasting someone's mental health crises broke an ethical line. But Phil's struggles didn't end there. Beyond the studio, legal and professional scrutiny pursued him. In 2008, during Britney Spears' highly publicized mental health issue, Dr. Phil visited her in the hospital. Shortly afterward, he published a public statement regarding the encounter. The response was quick. Mental health professionals chastised him for addressing the situation publicly, stating that it breached basic rules of confidentiality and ethics. even though he was not serving as her music treating clinician. Another serious situation arose in 2006 when a juvenile guest was arrested for shoplifting shortly after appearing on the show. The kid later said that staff members had encouraged the theft music in order to generate content for an episode. The charges prompted questions about entrapment and whether producers were purposefully creating crises rather than fixing them. Although the show denied misconduct, the story added to a music pattern of claims suggesting that dramatic outcomes were sometimes emphasized over guest welfare. The show's financial incentives also received criticism. Dr. Phil consistently rated among the highest paid television hosts, receiving tens of millions of dollars annually during the height of his career. His production business, Patesky Productions, managed many shows and media endeavors. Critics said that such enormous financial stakes increased pressure to deliver exciting content, especially when it came at the expense of vulnerable players. One of the most controversial problems Phil faced was when numerous ex-staff members accused the show of promoting a poisonous work atmosphere. Allegations included verbal abuse, intimidation, and extreme pressure to manipulate guests to heighten on-air tension. Some alleged they were told to distort situations or create music emotional reactions to make episodes more dramatic. These workplace concerns portrayed a picture of a production culture driven by ratings and deadlines rather than compassion. For over 20 years, Dr. Phil continued to have a devoted following in spite of all of this. To supporters, he was a straight shooter who stated what others wouldn't. They appreciated his directness and credited him with helping families confront painful issues. Yet to critics, he became a symbol of how therapy had been sold as entertainment, where personal difficulties were twisted into tales. However, one aspect of Dr. Phil's life remained amazingly steady despite all the turmoil and headlines. While his professional world was riddled with lawsuits, criticism, and scandal, his second marriage quietly endured behind the scenes. And this marriage, which has lasted, would turn out to be the only place he could find consistency. Dr. Phil met his present wife, Robin Jo Jameson, in the mid-1970s, not long after his divorce from Debbie Higgins. His life was still uncertain. While attempting to make a name for himself professionally, he was rebuilding emotionally. Robin changed his life by delving deeper into psychology and looking for stability following the breakdown of his first marriage. When she and Phil connected, there was no television empire waiting in the wings. There were no studio crowds or best-selling novels. Robin bravely entered Phil's uncertain future when he was still figuring everything out. They tied the knot in 1976, music, and from the outset their partnership was built on patience and sacrifice. Robin supported Phil as he shifted from clinical psychology into trial consultancy, helping him navigate the establishment of Courtroom Sciences Incorporated and then standing alongside him as he steadily moved toward television. Those early years were distinguished by grueling hours, financial instability, and a common belief that hard labor will eventually pay off. Robin was never just a supportive husband in the background. She became an active collaborator in Phil's journey. As his work developed, Robin began developing her own identity beyond marriage. She became a New York Times best-selling author, writing on self-worth, aging with confidence, music, and emotional resilience. She also developed her lifestyle company Robin McGra. Revelation, focusing on beauty and health, turning personal passion into a music successful business enterprise. At the same time, she committed herself to philanthropy, organizing non-profit activities aimed at aiding children and families in need. Eventually, Robin entered media in her own right, producing the podcast I've Got a Secret, which rated among Apple's top 100 podcasts. Her chats highlighted vulnerability, personal growth, and life experiences, providing listeners a look into the lady behind Dr. Phil's public image. Together, Phil and Robin built a family. Their first son, Jay McGra, was born in 1979. Jay later became an author, television producer, and CEO of Stage 29 Productions. He brought another well-known person into the family circle by marrying Erica Dom, one of the Dom triplets. Their second, music, son, Jordan McGra, was born in 1986. Jordan followed music, becoming a singer, composer, and performer, carving out his own creative career independent from television. Despite their high-profile jobs, Robin and Phil continually emphasized family as their cornerstone. Even as their reputation grew, they showed up at events, music, and ceremonies with their boys, portraying themselves as a close-knit team. Robin became a familiar fixture on the Dr. Phil show, often attending tapings and music, occasionally appearing in special episodes. Phil constantly cited Robin as his anchor, music, citing her as the consistent force behind his success and the person who kept him grounded when the attention grew overbearing. Robin has spoken frankly about their regular life, stating that despite music, everything, they still love simple routines like watching television at home, spending time with their children, and emphasizing family times above showy social settings. She often emphasized their closeness and teamwork, presenting their relationship as one built on love and consistency rather than fame. Publicly, they appear unified, but not everyone is convinced. Some critics claim that their public persona is unduly polished or well-managed. Critics think the couple's appearances are too perfect, music, too controlled. Still, even those who criticize the presentation agree one irrefutable fact. Robin and Phil McGra have remained married for almost 50 years, despite job turmoil, public controversy, and continuous media scrutiny. That kind of endurance does not arise by chance. Robin stood behind Dr. Phil despite all of the challenges he experienced, including criticism, lawsuits, and professional repercussions. Even as his reputation grew more divisive, she fostered his development, developed her own career, and assisted in raising a family that remained cohesive. Even if his second marriage seems to be going well, there are still unanswered doubts concerning his first. And in ways that Dr. Phil could not control, the truth about that initial romance, the divorce that precipitated it all, and the subsequent charges would finally come to light. Music, the truth of Dr. Phil's first marriage and divorce. For decades, Dr. Phil rarely spoke about his first marriage. While his second romance with Robin McGra played out openly in interviews and red carpet appearances, the story of Debbie Higgins remained primarily in the shadows. It wasn't until years after Dr. Phil became renowned that Debbie's side of the relationship began to surface. Debbie Higgins stated that Phil was dictatorial during their marriage, alleging he insisted she stay home and discouraged her from pursuing her own profession. According to her, the relationship felt confining. She stated she was expected to focus completely on homemaking while Phil focused on his studies and professional objectives. Debbie accused him of adultery as well. She talked of a marriage in which she felt alone, music, claiming that she was gradually deprived of her independence and was not permitted to engage in activities outside the home. Over time, there were allegations that the divorce was the result of severe misconduct or violence. Nonetheless, the most reliable narratives identify control problems and suspected adultery as the main causes of the marriage's dissolution. Dr. Phil has never verified, music, Debbie's particular allegations. When he has acknowledged the issue at all, he has made his words brief and broad. He confessed that he was young, inexperienced, and unprepared for marriage at the time. He has indicated that he simply was not ready for that kind of commitment. Beyond that, he has avoided details, choosing instead to redirect attention toward his long marriage with Robin. That quiet, music, has been interpreted in numerous ways. Some perceive it as an attempt to preserve privacy and avoid rehashing previous wounds. Others think it shows unease about going back to a period that contrasts strongly with the public persona he eventually developed as America's relationship expert. The irony is tough to miss. A man who spent over 2 decades advising music, couples on loyalty, communication, and emotional responsibility, began his adult life with a marriage that ended in claims of control and cheating. The discrepancy between Dr. Phil's work and the unanswered concerns about his personal history has long been a source of criticism. Some admirers contend that Phil's early failure does not negate decades of experience serving others because people develop, evolve, and change with time. However, others contend that the foundation counts, especially when someone promotes himself as a guide through personal relationships. Dr. Phil has proceeded forward without publicly addressing those early years. His estimated net worth is in the hundreds of millions, making him one of the most prosperous media characters. Even though his previous marriage ended amicably, its shadow remained. Ultimately, Dr. Phil's legacy lies halfway between the personal history he decided to leave behind and the advice he provided millions of people. Do you think Dr. Phil is to blame for his first marriage failing? Tell us by leaving a comment below. Music. If you loved this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for future updates.